Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory, a place where you can share your encounters and experiences with people who will understand. In this episode, we have Aaron from Arkansas, and he claims the Sasquatch have been coming up to his property, and he has heard and seen some strange things in his woods. It's still unknown why the Sasquatch will come up to people's properties and watch them for long durations of time. The Native Americans refer to them as the Watchers, and that statement seems to be very true and accurate. I appreciate the people who still watch and support the channel. Things have been really slow lately, and I really hope they pick back up soon. If you guys can, please like and subscribe, and if you have had a Sasquatch or cryptid encounter, please feel free to reach out to me sometime. Alright guys, let's dive into our next encounter from the great state of Arkansas. Alright, Aaron, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, man. Excited to talk to you.
Good to hear. You had some experiences in Arkansas. If you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and what happened.
Well, I'm originally from upstate New York, Binghamton to be exact. Been a big, uh, we'll call it the phenomenon of Sasquatch. I've been into it since the Patterson-Gimlin film. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, seeing all the TV episodes that were out there, I was like, that's interesting. So fast forwarding to being more of an adult, I got down the rabbit hole, and just all the evidence that's out there kept me going. So I've been in the place that I'm at for about 8 years. So rewind to 2019. It's spring, we'll call it mid-April. I work second shift. I got out about 10:30. Usually I'd let my dogs out for last call about 12:30. So I let the dogs out. They're doing their thing in the side yard, and they kind of go towards the back end, and I can hear them moving. And probably 15 yards, maybe 20 yards into my pine thicket, I can hear something moving around back there. Dogs come up to the house, and they're kind of looking back in that general area. And man, all of a sudden, there's this growl. And I mean, we're talking a growl that I felt that growl. And all in one smooth sound, it's going from a deep guttural grrr, and it hits this tone with like the growl with a roar, and it goes into a howl. And as this thing's howling, I've got a pack of coyotes that are just erupting with it. But I can even hear that howl mixed with the coyotes. And it just froze me. If I would have had a flashlight on me, I know for a fact I could have seen eye shine. Never saw nothing. After it all happened, I kind of just went in the house and thought, huh, yeah, that was nice. Sure, that was Bigfoot. I think I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight instead of in the back bedroom. So fast forward a few months later, my friend Chad was going through some things. So we always hang out outside here. I've got a small little fishing pond, fun to fish, and always doing a campfire. Him and I are both Bigfoot believers. You know, he had a similar experience. Him and I were talking about me hearing that growl, and he was like, dude, I'm not going to lie to you. About 2 years ago, I'm with my wife up at her parents' house. Now, they're like 20 miles up the road from me. I'm in Searcy, Arkansas. So we're in like the foothills of the Ozarks. And his wife's parents kind of lived almost in the woods, but they were in the open spot and it backed up to the woods. And he said, man, I was laying there in bed and I didn't hear a growl, man, but man, I heard this howl that was like a howl, but a scream. And it even woke my wife up, and she was like, what was that? An airplane flying low? And he was like, no, that was no airplane, man. And, man, so after he said that, we're talking about that growl and like the possibility of what that was. You know, I have several of my friends that hunt. Could a coyote make that kind of sound? And they're like, coyotes are more of a yipper than a growler. And they said, you felt that? Are you sure? I'm like, man, I'm just telling you what I experienced. So, um, as Chad and I are hanging out, like he's coming up 2 or 3 times a week for months, and we'd hear different things from wood knocks. It would never be more than two, just a tunk tunk. Like, okay, that was definitely something to things moving. And you can tell the difference between something being on 4 legs to something being on 2 legs moving around. And it was like, yeah, man, there's definitely something going on here. And the coyotes would get so close. There'd be times police siren would go off either in town or on my road, and the coyotes would go nuts, and it would sound like they were within 20 yards. So with the coyotes moving, we could always hear something else moving around. Not so much noises like vocalizations as it would be just the wood knocks or, you know, branches breaking underfoot. Like, man, that's not a deer. That's a rabbit's definitely not snapping that branch. So we're just like, because we both believe that Sasquatch is real, we look at it scientifically. We're going to X-nay what it could be. Was it this? Was it this? Was it that? So fast forwarding, one of my next experiences here is it was about this time of year, mid-November. It was a real, real cold night. It rained most of the day, and towards the night it turned into like a mist. So I'm sitting out on my back porch, and the dogs are out there with me, and all of a sudden there's this bullfrog. I'm like, man, that frog sounds sick. And then I'm like, what would a frog be doing out this time of year? We've already had our first frost. It's already been a couple weeks where the nights have been in the 30s. There is no way that's a frog. And I noticed my dogs just staring intently on the back side of my pond. And I look in the area that they're looking, and I see a figure. This figure's probably maybe 6.5 feet tall. And it's blending in with the fog. Like the fog is like a gray, and this figure that I'm seeing is like a gunmetal gray. And I can make out a head, chest, torso, and a little bit of legs. And I'm looking at it. I probably looked at this thing for 5 minutes and never moved. I go back to, I listen to Sasquatch Chronicles a lot, and I enjoy the eyewitness encounters. You can always tell when somebody's experienced something by the tone in their voice. And I recalled a few where, sometimes these things get caught and they're great at just freezing. Because I sat there and watched it, and I'm just like, man, I'm just seeing things. Because it never moved, and I never heard the frog again. So I gave up. I came back inside and went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and I was looking in the area of where this was, and there's 2 smaller trees on the left side, about 4 or 5 foot gap, and there's a better sized tree on the right. And I'm looking right there where I saw that figure, and there's nothing there. Nothing. It's why I reached out to you with everything that I've heard and experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get your take on, with the activity that I'm getting, what you thought it could be. And after talking to you, I'm with you that I've got one that's comfortable coming up to me, and thank goodness it's never been anything aggressive yet. Besides that growl, it's always just been little noises and somewhat keeping its distance from me. Especially about 2 years ago, I added a lot more lights to my property, and I also cut back the undergrowth where it used to come within 20 feet of my fire. I've knocked it back where it's like 50 feet from my fire now. So I've got space in between us. And, you know, I can't say I've ever seen it besides that figure. It still sticks with me. Um, the night that you and I talked, I was looking in that spot going, there's nothing there. And, I do have three Sasquatch tin cutouts, and two of them are 8 foot, one of them is 3 foot, and it was about the size and shape of that cutout. And I was like, man, it very well could have been. And I just happened to catch it. It caught me looking, and it just froze in its steps.
Mhm.
So
Do you think possibly that it saw your cutouts and maybe thought it was like a Sasquatch? Perhaps
yeah,
like a Sasquatch decoy?
uh, yeah. No, I didn't have them yet. I got them
Mm,
that
okay.
next year after I saw them. But my friend Chad and I got talking about that because the activity didn't seem to get as close, and he asked somewhat similar, like, "Man, do you think it sees them and it it's scared off, or do you think you might be calling it in?" It's like, well, I don't know. I call it my Sasquatch sanctuary, so hopefully it feels at peace with me that I do with it, and we can keep this experience going. There are times where I hear things and I will say out loud, as crazy as it sounds, like, hey, let's just stay cool. If you understand me, I don't want any trouble. Because there are times that I've heard things and I've gone out with my gun, and said, look, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you hurting me. Please never hurt my dogs, because I've heard where they can kill dogs and they really don't like dogs. And I think that's why that one back in 2019 growled at me. It wasn't used to me being out so late. It came up to kind of look around my place, and the dogs got too close, and it felt like a warning, like, hey, I'm here, back off. Because, oh my Lord, even talking about it still, I felt it, man. Never have I heard something besides like the recordings that you've gotten. And there's a few other programs like Mountain Beast Mysteries. They had an episode where they had I can't think of his name, Cliff Barrickman, out at this property that they've been going to in Ohio, and they happened to catch a group of coyotes going off, and you could hear something. It was always in between it, like the coyotes would howl. There'd be that stop where the coyotes wouldn't be howling anymore, and you could hear this thing howling, and I was like, "Holy cow, that's what I heard for sure."
Yeah. You need to check out this channel called Sasquatch Bioacoustic. And
Okay.
he's got some vocalizations from St. Louis County, Minnesota. And it sounds like what you described to me the other day. Do you want to recreate it? It sounded kind of prehistoric to me. I mean, I don't want
Do
to
you
put you on
want
the
the
spot.
howl or do you want the bullfrog?
The loud one that you heard.
Okay, the growl was like a, and I mean the roo just kept going. This whole sound experience probably lasted 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you heard that.
Yeah, saying that's what I thought too, but it also freaked me out because I did sleep in the back bedroom, and uh, back in my house, you go 10 feet, you're in my hardwood forest, so it's like right there. And another experience I've had here, fast forwarding to 2 years ago, from 2019 to 2 years ago, it was February. We got a real bad ice storm. Like, it had been ice raining all day, so they called off work, and I went out again about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night with the dogs, let them play on the ice and do their final deeds for the day. And I'm sitting there listening, and just you could hear all the ice just building and cracking certain limbs. And then all of a sudden there was a crick, crack, crack, call, boom. And I was like, wow, how cool was that to be out here and timing those pine boughs breaking. What freaked me out was as soon as those pine boughs hit the ground, there was this. I mean, this woo went on for like 5 seconds, and I could hear something crashing through the woods. My dogs went running off after it, and I'm out there like a lunatic screaming, "Get out of here! Get back here! Get out!" Back and forth between "get back here" and "get out of here." And I'm a little shook because I'm like, man, I'm going through my head like, what could that have been? Like, all right, eliminating everything. Maybe it was my neighbor and they're out there hammered and they heard that and they're just hooting and hollering from it. And I'm like, well, that doesn't explain what ran off. I heard something crash and boom, it was breaking branches. And I wouldn't quite say like they've said a bulldozer going through the woods, but it sounded like a good size animal just crashing. I even went out the next morning and I looked to see if I could find footprints. I took a straight line from my place to almost my neighbor's house and walked a straight line, but I never saw anything. No footprints or anything. I don't know if it's because it had that big of strides. I didn't really look that hard. It was really icy and I just went with it. I was like, that's proof enough that I've definitely got something. For some reason, it's entertained with me and it likes coming up here. I don't know if it's because I have all the fires and I like your channel so much because your Sasquatch theory is perfect. It's let's theorize what is this? It has been around for a long time, so it has watched us humans be very destructive. But I also feel that it can tell the difference between something or someone like any animal that's going to be good or bad. And I think it just feels that I'm not going to bother it, so it's comfortable getting somewhat close to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. How far away are you from the Boggy Creek area?
Boggy Creek, I'm about 4 hours.
That's not too
It's
far.
funny. No, it's funny. I had a girlfriend that about 3 years ago that got a kick that I'm very open and honest with my belief in Sasquatch. Like you can like it or not, you can think I'm crazy or not. I don't care. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. It's kind of a little hobby. So she thought it was cool that I was in that and said, "Hey, have you ever seen the movie of The Legend of Boggy Creek?" And I was like, "Oh my Lord, yes." It's been on my bucket list since I moved here to Arkansas to go down to the Boggy Creek area. We didn't have a lot of time to explore, but I did get to go down and see the Monster Mart. And then the Monster Mart has a map of the Falk area, and it has where people will come in and say, "Hey, noise heard here, road crossing here." And then it also has areas marked off where you can go to and still see the original sites from the movie. A lot of the houses are no longer there, but that property is still there. So we went and did that. And it's funny. A friend went with me and my girlfriend on this trip because he's a believer too. And we came back to my place, and him and I are hanging out, and all of a sudden he was like, "Man, what was that?" Because I heard something kind of moving myself, and I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He was like, "Dude, I just saw something black running back down in your holler." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Did it look like it was on two legs? Did it look like it was on four legs? What color was?" He was like, "It was black, and it was, I couldn't really gauge on how tall it was because it moved quick, but it was definitely standing upright because it was tall." I was like, "Man, I'd believe it," because it was funny early that morning when I was getting myself ready to go on this trip. I heard two wood knocks, boop, boop. It's like, man, hey, okay, wishing me a good trip. Cool, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Are your dogs always barking into the woods?
Occasionally,
Hmm.
yes, especially like when it gets dark, I won't let them be outside with me. I do put them out on the back porch, And I always, when they get barking, I'll look up out on the porch to see, are they barking towards the road or are they barking towards the forest? And it's like a good half and half, you know, they'll bark at the road. And then I'm always looking, when they're looking in the back, I'm looking because usually I'm hearing what they're hearing. It usually just feels, or not feels, sounds
Mhm.
like something shuffling around. It's moving just slowly, but it is amazing on how quiet they can be.
Yeah. But you have heard bipedal footsteps in the
Oh
woodline?
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. To me, it sounded like a big lumberjack walking around out there, like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when you hear them twigs chick 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 crack, chick 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 crack, like wow, that's no rabbit doing that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Like,
People always ask me, how do you know the owls are Bigfoot? Well, when you hear loud knocks and them break a tree, it's Bigfoot. Because you can't
yeah,
really
or
tell, because they're mimicking owls, so they sound the
right.
same.
They do, but you can definitely hear that like difference because that's another indicator when I know it's moving towards me is I've got a pair of hoot owls. The hoot owls will be doing their thing, and then there's always that one that's like you got the whoo whoo whoo, and then you've got the one that's like whoo whoo. Like, yeah, okay, you're a good mimicker, but I'm on to you, buddy.
Yeah. Or they roll together. Like they mimic the animals, but they also hang out with them as far as the coyotes, the owls, and whatever else is out there.
Yeah, I can see that, especially with the coyotes. They're following the prey, and the coyotes are probably picking up the scraps. I can imagine this thing being an omnivore. You know, maybe this is one of the things that draws it to my place certain times of year is I've got a ton of acorns, I've got a ton of persimmon trees, and then I've also got beech nuts.
Yeah, it could be. Is there a particular waterway that's close to the area?
Not really, but I do have
Within miles.
within miles. Yes, I'm right next to the Red River, the Little Red River.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
probably miles down the road.
Yeah. Because when I think of them traveling the waterways, that doesn't mean you're going to find them at the river. They could be a couple miles off into the woods, but still close to the river because a few miles isn't much for them.
Yeah, I get that. I think of the territory that they can cover. If a bear can cover a territory of 100 miles, well, if you're talking about something that's bigger than a bear, it can probably have an even bigger territory. And that's kind of what I feel I'm in. I'm in its territorial ring, and I'm just one of the spots that it likes to pass through. Now, it does have a couple roads it has to cross, but really, there's so many times that these roads are dead.
Yeah.
Not a car will be on it.
Aaron, what are your plans for the future on documenting some of this activity? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna take your advice and invest in a audio recorder. You know, it doesn't seem like the trail cameras and video cameras work as much as the audio recordings have. I'm not so much worried about proving what I've got versus, hey, listen for yourself. What do you think? So I wanted to do my own little channel, make myself a Bigfoot, but also include other adventures and just call it my backyard Bigfoot and see what kind of sounds I can get. And when I get time, I'd like to go to more places. A friend and I that I went down to Boggy Creek with, we'd like to plan a day trip, maybe a 2 day trip where we go down there, we pick an area where there's been sightings and we can fish and just hang out and fish and kind of explore the area and see what we have. If we can see anything, if not, it's still cool to be like, hey, we were there and we tried. You can't get anything done without putting boots on the ground.
Yeah. Um, has there been any paranormal activity on the property, or is it just the Bigfoot?
You know, with the paranormal activity, it could be the Sasquatch, but I have had feelings of something. It felt like something was right on top of me. You know, I didn't quite feel anything like pushing on my chest, but just that overwhelming. sense that something is right there. And honestly, I'll get up and, devil, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. You don't belong here. Get. And
Mhm.
it'll usually go. But I have had feelings. I don't really get a lot of feeling when I'm hearing the activities from what I know is the Sasquatch moving around. Only when it's making certain noises that it's like, okay, maybe I'm getting too close. Because I've been trying to get ballsier. It gets dark out early now. So I test myself. Okay, it's dark. You're going to sit out here by the fire. You've got enough lights. Sit here until you get too creeped out. And I kind of feel like a wuss at times because it's like, man, I'm literally 2.5 miles from the city that I live in, and the population is 22,000 people. So it's not a huge city, but I am surrounded. Once you go north, south, east, or west, I am nothing but forest. Now, since my encounters have happened here, I have been in contact with a Bigfoot researcher that is from the Clinton area of Arkansas, which is probably 45 minutes north of me. And I've told him my experiences, and he agreed. Just like you said, man, it definitely sounds like you had some activity. And he said, now, I researched this area probably 20 miles up the road from you, and he said they have for sure found evidence where there's a family group moving through. They have documented at least five, two adults, two subadults, and then a juvenile. And with the experience that I've had, that's often what Chad and I would discuss. Like, do I think I have an adult coming around here, or is it maybe a youngster? I'm not going to say like it's a toddler one, but more of a juvenile, maybe a young teenager, because it does seem kind of playful in how curious it is. Where I feel the adults have probably learned, no, you need to stay farther back. The youngsters are usually the ones that are caught a little more than the adults haven't quite learned and want to push that little barrier just like any teenager would.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. You mentioned the Sasquatch was a gunmetal gray color. Could you
Yes, sir.
see fur?
Yes. I mean, could I make out detail of that fur? No, but I could tell that this thing, I wouldn't quite call it like a long-haired shaggy, but it was like a middle. Maybe, the hair was probably 2, 3 inches long. And I could see it. I could see it off the top of its head because it seemed to be turned sideways. Its face would have been facing north. Its back would have been facing south, and I could make out the hair that went from the back of his head down to his back. I could see all the way down the buttocks area. Now, I couldn't make out arms or anything, but I could make out a full silhouette because it just amazed me on how it almost seemed to be like, how they'll say that it absorbs the sunlight. It seemed like it was doing that with the fog where it was almost perfectly blended in,
Mhm.
but its silhouette still stood out to me.
And how tall was the figure?
I'd say between 6.5, maybe 7 foot tall.
Yeah. Did it freak you out?
Uh, yes and no, because it to me it was kind of cool to see, but it was also like, wow, this thing's awful ballsy. Because we're talking from my back porch to across the ponds, 100 feet. So to me, that's coming pretty close to contact with me. So it did kind of get me a little freaked out that, wow, this thing's that comfortable around me.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like a coincidence that the Native Americans call them the Watchers, but if you go into like the book of Enoch, the fallen angels and all that, they call them the Watchers as well.
Yeah,
It's kind of
uh,
strange because they say
it
the
is.
Sasquatch might be connected to like the Nephilim and all that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of episodes about that theory where it could be related to the Nephilim. And really, you go back to uh, listening to the Native Americans, and some Native Americans made their sacrifices. Maybe this is why they're saying there's a few different subspecies. We just don't know with this phenomenon. I get the phenomenon theory from Les Stroud. He was another one when he went out there. I think he did 2 seasons of his own trying to find Bigfoot, and the way he approached it was like, man, if this guy's going, hey, there's definitely something that I can't explain. Again, are we going to say, yep, this is for sure Sasquatch? No. But tell me what else it could be.
Yeah. I think it's strange, like how the Bigfoot community hates Todd Standing. I shouldn't say hate, but it seems like they really dislike him. But if
Yeah.
you watch his videos, Les Stroud was a part of that, Jeff Meldrum, John
Yep.
Bendernagel, like all the biggest
Yes, sir.
names. So if they
Yeah.
believed and thought there was something there, I'm going to take their opinion over the viewers because the viewers weren't there.
I'm 100% with you there. Yeah, I see where Todd can be a little
Obnoxious.
extreme and intense and obnoxious, but again, you can't.
He means well, I think.
I do too. I feel he's putting out some factual things. I anymore. I don't watch his videos as much as I do like yours and listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, your eyewitness accountants. I like what Les Stroud said. All right, you take a town hall, you get 100 people stand up, say, hey, I've had an experience. Okay. You say, all right, to those 100 people, do you think it could have been something else? Okay. If you think it's something else, sit down. Okay. Now you've got so many people left and you weed that out. And then you get down to the 1% that's still standing there saying, hey, this is what I've seen. This is what I've heard. Well, if you take 1% of that 1%, you still have something there that you can't go ahead and call him a liar, but not everybody's going to be a liar. There's people out there like you, myself, the people that you've had on your show. We've experienced something.
Yeah.
You can usually tell who's BSing you.
And like with Les Stroud, it takes a lot of balls to be like, okay, I think I'm going to buy a plane ticket and go to the Amazon or Alaska or Africa for a whole week and try to make a video. You know what I mean? Who else is really
Right.
doing that? So
Right. And what reason would he have to hoax this? He doesn't need the viewership. He did this truly looking at it in a scientific. Again, I like how he says the Bigfoot phenomenon because that's really what we have. I also like Thinker Thunker. What he did with the way he's able to analyze the sounds. And then I don't know if you've looked at any of his videos lately. He's been doing these measurements that, okay, they prove Patty had 30% larger arms than us and 30% shorter legs, where you take our body and their body, ours are pretty much equal, arms the same length, legs same length, torso same length. And then you take Patty, and there's been a few other videos that he's done the same thing and said, well, look here, how do you explain these long arms? Here we go. The forest giant, longer limbs. He had a really cool video where a guy caught one whipping a rock at him. And, you can see this thing's just massive. So if it's a guy in a costume, how is he moving around so freely? And then when this thing whips the rock and he pauses it and that thing has like a 10-foot wingspan, he said, look, here you go. You can't fake where your elbow bends. You can't fake where your wrist bends. You can't fake where your shoulder is. And even if you had a prosthetic that would extend you farther, well, it still wouldn't affect where your arms are moving. And if you had a prosthetic, you're not going to be able to do this. And it's again where it's like, I love your channel, the sounds you got out of the Mark Twain Forest, man. Wow. Dude, there was a few of them that I was like, holy cow, that's it. That's what I heard. The huffing that you got where it sounded like it was right underneath your recorder where it was just going, oh, like, damn, man,
yeah,
I couldn't imagine being there. Yeah, or the way it was imitating the dogs, because that'll be another indicator to me that I know they're moving through the area is I'll start hearing the dogs go off, and then all of a sudden they're going off, and everything gets super quiet.
Hmm.
Even around my place, I'll notice it. Like birds are chirping, rabbits and squirrels are moving around, and then it gets about twilight, and everything's just boop. Crickets are done, frogs are done, birds aren't moving.
Yeah, the same thing happens out here. So now that you've experienced the activity, you've discussed or you talked about getting an audio recorder. Have you been going out in the woods exploring, or are you letting them come to you?
I do more of letting them come to me, but what I started last year is a trail. I want a trail that goes all the way around my property. I've got one that goes straight back, and then I've got one that goes around my pond and goes straight back. I want to connect that up. So I have been pushing going into the woods, but I also want to give them their area. Uh, I want to leave the natural part to itself. I want my little areas, but I'm also going to leave nature its place. So it stays comfortable with me. If I get doing too much, I might scare this off. And honestly, I kind of miss having the little encounters that I do have. I think it's entertaining, to be honest with you. But I haven't had anything terrifying yet. I guarantee my mind would change if all of a sudden this thing was growling, snarling, and charging me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Have you heard any other Bigfoot reports from the river that's close to you?
Not so much off the river. It's more in the well, I guess it is. It is following because, like you said, it's only got to be within a few miles of the river. It is following the mountains straight down from Searcy, Arkansas, up to Pangburn, up to Mountain View, Arkansas. You're looking at probably 80 miles of mountainous terrain. It's the foothills of the Ozarks, and it really gets rural.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any Native American burial grounds close to you.
Huh. Now that would be something I'd have to do my research on.
Yep, same here. I got to look into that. I just wonder if it has something to do with the activity.
That's a good question. We'll have to bounce some more ideas off each other because I've got something going on, and your help with throwing me ideas on what to research and little tricks to do would be greatly appreciated. And if I ever do get anything of something I feel would be worth you checking out, I'll gladly send it to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can only offer so much help as far as like devices to use, little tactics, but I'm not going to tell you to go out there and gift them because, like, what if something happens to you? It's like Aaron got ate by some unknown creature. I'd be like, oh,
Right.
oh, well, I wish I would have never told him
I
that.
now I did try that. I found an old not cypress. I'm sorry, cedar stump that had been struck by lightning, and I had a couple pieces of black granite. And I had heard where people had been leaving stuff like stones out, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this, but it's never moved. It's always been in the same spot. And I got thinking the same thing, like you said, like, I don't want to start going out and giving it food because then it's going to associate me with food. And if I ever stop or if I move from here and those people don't know it's there, it could turn ugly. I'd rather it just associate me with the guy that sits out there by a fire and is fun to watch.
Yeah, because if you gift it, let's say like you start bringing it in and it gets familiar with the area and it gets on a routine, one day you could be that gift. You know what I mean? Like it could
Yeah.
just see you as the food.
Like, yeah, you know what? It's winter. I'm hungry. He's looking fat and plump.
Yeah, I've seen that with bears. Like people will feed bears and they eat the food and then like eventually like they don't want the food, they want you.
Yeah.
And that's
No, thank
scary.
you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you're able to document some of the activity. If they do come up, just make sure you're ready. Always have your phone nearby and hope for the best.
That's the one thing it always does seem to catch me is I won't have my phone on me, you know, and then I'll go back and I'll get it and I'll sit and I'll wait and nothing else happens. Like, you smart little bugger.
Yeah, it always happens when you least expect it. It doesn't matter how much you carry around the gear. They're going to do it whenever you put it down or you don't have it on you.
Yep. Yep. Or you just pick it up and you hit record and it's already done.
hmm Yeah, like I've had times when they're out there knocking, I'll pull out my phone, hit record, it stops. Put the phone
Yep.
away, a few minutes later, it picks back up. Pull the phone back out, it stops. And it's like, I can't time it right. The only way to do it is just to let your camera roll nonstop, but then they won't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think, again, I'm going to do, like you said, with getting the little recorder. And I've got an idea going in my head that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, okay, it's 6 o'clock now. I've turned it on at this time. And if I hear anything, at least instead of leaving it out for 24 hours and reviewing that 24 hours, I can at least go like, okay, I set out here from 6 to 10, and at 7:15, I heard something. So I know a time that I can go and check.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it, honestly. I mean, that's worked for me is sitting out there when they do something, hit record and leave your recorder out there. But when you just randomly put your recorder out there for 12 hours or whatever, it's just a lot of stuff to go through and you're putting a lot of work on yourself. So, I mean, if you can be
Right.
out there to turn on the recorder, hit record, I think you'll get some good stuff. So the sirens, they make the coyotes go nuts. I've heard that out here as well. I wonder if they make the Sasquatch vocalize.
I thought that too, because it can be quiet and the coyotes get going, and all of a sudden it does seem to like kick up activity. I don't know if it's because they're moving with it or it just, everybody got excited.
Yeah. I was watching some TV show. I don't know if it was on the History Channel, but it was about some guy that was living out in a cave in Arkansas. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Yeah, like he lives out there in the middle of the woods. I guess his wife died years ago, but it's an old guy and he just lives in this giant cave and it's crazy.
You know about what area? Like
No,
north central?
they just said the Ozarks, deep in the Ozarks.
Okay. Okay, so that's northwest to me.
Okay. So
That's like the Fayetteville area.
yeah, the foothills, that's pretty rough terrain, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of pine thickets and hardwoods.
Yeah. Well, that's
And it
Sasquatch
is,
territory.
oh yeah, that's another reason why I'm 100% where this thing could be moving through, because yeah, I've got a good sized city right here, but in between this good sized city, you're talking thousands and thousands of acres of nothing but wilderness. So there's got to be a ton of animals.
hmm My buddy told me that Arkansas and Idaho are the top states for missing people,
Yeah,
and the
I
lower
believe that.
48.
I truly would believe that, especially we don't have a lot of cell phone service and you get people going out in the woods, and we've got a lot of dangerous critters. There's cougars around here. There's plenty of venomous snakes, and well, there's also the phenomenon that could just be like, "Yep, we'll take this hiker and no one will ever know."
Yeah.
What they do with them, we don't know. Your Killing Fields episodes, that man, I can't imagine what he's dealing with. The first time coming across that and seeing like, well, if you're a hunter, you don't just butcher the animal. We're not strong enough to go out there and snap a deer's neck. How are these happening? It's like, yeah, I can see where they'd be a hell of a hunter. They group up together. They can throw rocks. I forget who brought that up with, it might even been your show, a big enough rock with the velocity that they could get chucking it, hits it, knocks it down, then you've got that next one right there ready to pounce on it. I
Yeah.
can see where they just be highly, highly intelligent. I can see why there is such a cover up, because it is something that's so close to us. Could this have been something that also branched off from us you know, when the caveman were all there and there was all types of eventually man species? Is this something that has just learned to survive instead of where we became aware of our surroundings and wanting to be technology advanced, this thing became aware of its surroundings and just wanted to be one with nature and distance itself from our destruction.
Yeah. Well, instead of me asking the regular questions of what do you think they are, how do you think they got here, I'm gonna ask you something different. What would you
Okay.
do if the Sasquatch turned and tried coming in at night and like terrorizing you? What would your plan of action be?
Oh my lord! If I was sitting down there by my fire and it all of a sudden decided to get aggressive, honestly, I would try the submissive technique instead of running and triggering a more primal hunt. I think I would try the submissive, turn my back to it, and hunker down slow and pray that it wouldn't see me as a threat. Like kind of, you and I said the movie exists. Towards the ending there, when the guy is running out and he's got the gun and he just screams "stop," and they stop and they're looking at each other and he turns his back and just kind of praying, "Go away, go away, go away." That's honestly what I would do. I wouldn't see any sense in me running into my house because if I ran and that thing decided to run on me, I'm not outrunning it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. They seem like they're gonna do something whenever they break these trees or they like rush people out of the woods. But what if they decided to keep going? Like, what if they didn't stop?
Right? We wouldn't have a chance. The only gun I have is a 9 millimeter pistol, and that ain't gonna stop it. That's just gonna piss it off more, and it's gonna give it more reason just to tear me to shreds,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't stand a chance.
And like
Same
a
with my dogs.
camera.
If the dog, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like a camera. It's really difficult to have like a high-powered rifle on you at all times. You know what I mean? And it's gonna
Right,
happen when you least expect it.
right. I can't just sit here and walk around my property all the time. My 870 ready to go, and even with the shotgun, I don't feel that would stop it. A slug to the chest, that thing would probably bounce right off it, and it'd look at me like, okay, it's on. You're going to be supper tonight. Thank you for feeding us.
Yeah, I always was excited to know there wasn't any grizzly bears around here. I live in the Midwest, and those things are like up north in Canada and Alaska. But to know that there's something out here that would make a grizzly bear run away is scary.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And the people that kind of argue that, well, how could something like that exist? If you're talking about something that will stay on the modest side of how is something 7 to 8 feet tall, 400 pounds surviving? How do grizzly bears do it? How do the Kodiak bears do it? How do the moose do it? How do even a smaller size the bear do it? You're not talking like, I'm not going to say there's millions of these things, maybe worldwide. It's the other phenomenon that I get a kick out of is, okay, if this thing doesn't exist, why does Australia have something? China have something? Russia have something? The Ukraine have something? We have something. South
Mhm.
America has something. You can go back into the Native American history, and they have their own names. So, there's a difference with a name in something that's, oh, here's our folklore. And then there's another thing when it's, okay, hey, this is a deer, this is a bear, this is our Sasquatch. I feel the Native Americans had a different relationship with it. The Native Americans had, they cared about the earth, they preserved. So I feel Sasquatch would have had a different relationship with them,
Yeah.
where the white man came to America and we started destroying its habitats and building and encroaching and killing indiscriminately. It watches us in the woods. It'll see these hunters that'll go out and just kill, 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 kill. I can
Yeah.
see where it's like, yeah, no, we don't need nothing to do with you.
Hmm. I wonder how much different like the Native American science would have turned out, like if they would have advanced and turned technological, because they included Sasquatch with the wildlife. So like if
Yeah,
they would have became advanced, like it would have turned out a lot more different than how our science is viewed today.
I think it's sad that our science won't even really humor it. Yeah, and we've got a lot of good scientists out there, like you mentioned, Dr. Meldrum and Dr. Bendenagel. they've done their homework and still ignored. And I give credit to Dr. Melgrim because he still stands by what he's saying. Like, look, I'm a scientist. I've
Yeah.
proven the foot, uh, the mid tarsal break. Seeing what he's discovered, you can see the different footprints. You can kind of tell which ones are fake and which ones are definitely a creature. Talking on the footprints, I haven't seen any recent videos, but there is this channel called Into the 400s. They were up there in our little corner of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri in the Ozarks, and he found a footprint trail that went for hundreds and hundreds of yards. He said it was my luck. The only thing I went out with is my camera. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just kind of researching this area. And he's got this all on video. Like you can see each foot and how straight it was. And there was a few where you could see the toe splay and certain tricks where it slipped. And as he was coming out, you could hear activity in the background and rocks being thrown. Boop. You'd see he even would turn around and you'd see it fall right in back of him. And it's like, man, if somebody's going through the trouble of hoaxing all this, you're going through a lot of effort for something that what's the payoff? You're not going to get millions and millions of views on YouTube once people find it's fake. So why bother trying to fake something? Or when people are catching these things on camera, especially like you're out in the middle of nowhere in your area, somebody's got to know where you're at, the time you're going to be there, and actually have the money to create something that's going to pass the test of us knowing if it's real or not. Get out of here. I get there's some hoaxers out there, but I feel more and more the proof is coming out there.
Yeah, I agree as well. I always hear people say all we have is a bunch of blurry photos and something that was shot from 1960 something. And I'm like, what
Yeah.
about all those other videos? It's just like people don't know. They don't know that they're out there. There's probably thousands of encounters just in the Ozarks, and even people that live around here, they don't know. They don't
Yeah.
care to know.
Or they'd rather not know because it's going down. You're going down a rabbit hole. No thanks. I don't want to get into your conspiracy, crazy tinfoil aliens and all this. No. Well, it's a big universe, and I think we're ignorant as humans to think we know everything.
Yeah, it's proof that people believe what they're told.
Yeah. Haven't we learned that the hard way?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Aaron. Do you have any more experiences? Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, the only other thing I'd like to add is gearing up to talk to you. I had an experience probably happen. Oh, it was before the growl. It was probably my first year in the place that I'm at. I'm out on the back porch, and my back porch overlooks my pond. My pond's not very big. It's only probably 50 yards round, right? So I'm just overlooking it. It's dark out, but I got a nice full moon, so I can really see clearly. And I stepped down off the back porch, and all of a sudden, like it reminded me of like when a waterfowl is trying to distract away from the water nest and it's just flapping its wings on the water. I saw that, but as I've been thinking about it, like that wingspan that I saw was probably 7 feet from fingertip to fingertip. So I don't think it was a bird. I think the Sasquatch was in the water doing whatever it was doing. It saw me, got scared, and bolted up onto shore. Because I mean, the ruckus that it made on the surface of the water was like, man, it was pretty intense. But at that time, I wasn't thinking. When stuff like that happens a lot, I hear a lot that our brain is just wired to trigger it to, okay, what do I know? Versus looking at what it could be. But other than that, it's mainly just been wood knocks, things walking around, and the growl howl have been the only vocalizations I've really heard that I can define. It does get tough. Me saying for sure it wasn't an owl. I'd love to be able to get it on recording. Maybe one of these days I will.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Well, Aaron, I appreciate you for getting in contact with me and sharing all your experiences openly with everyone. And if more things go down, certainly get in contact with me. And you never know, you might have an encounter here in the future.
Yeah, I will, man. I appreciate your time and your patience with me and getting back to me. And I thank you for letting me be on your program.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's no problem. And I appreciate you.
Have yourself a good afternoon, Miguel.
Yeah, you too. Take care, man.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. All right, Aaron, thanks again for sharing your encounter, your experiences. And yeah, that does sound like Sasquatch activity. The vocalizations that you described sounds like things I've heard in recordings and on TV shows in the past. And it seems to line up with Sasquatch activity. It could be that there were juveniles around and they were observing you guys. I think it's my theory that the mother Sasquatch will bring their juveniles around people and let them observe them so they can learn how to avoid people. Another theory on why they like to watch people, the Native Americans have talked about how they will abduct women and children and even males. So it could be possible they're planning their next attack, but it's really too hard to say. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And yeah, we'll be back at it soon with more Bigfoot content. Hopefully, we'll do some research soon. Thank you, everyone, and take care.